It's ready. It's on. Ward isn't here.
I thought you were going to sing a song for us.
Oh, just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us. Oh, we'll leave it at that. That'll be it. You and I.
You picked the high key. You should have picked a little bit.
I know. I'm so happy that Ward isn't here today. I mean, I get to kick back and relax. I don't have to deal with any. Well, he's not here to defend himself. I probably shouldn't say anything more than that, but I don't have to deal with any Wardisms today, which I'm really excited about.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you. No, don't look over my peek over my surprising things I might have for you.
Surprising things you might have for me. Okay.
I might have some surprising stories.
You know what? I can tell you, Mike Anderson, if you are there, totally didn't look up the topic this week, man. We will do it next week. I'll make a note of it next week.
Leroy, I'm so disappointed in you.
Oh, that's all right. Don't be disappointed.
I was just getting my phone just in case we need to check some.
Well, don't be disappointed. Look, I'm sorry, Mike Anderson. It's not that I don't care about it. I do really care about that topic. It's a very interesting topic.
Yes, we've all been crazy busy, but it doesn't mean it's not important.
It's not. It doesn't mean it's not important.
Yeah, we just we relax. We apologize. So, wow, we can pick any topic we want, and Ward can't stop us.
We could actually spend the next hour talking about Ward, and he couldn't stop us.
Yeah, he has a tragic new puppy. We know that.
I know. I don't want to.
Puppy.
I don't want to tell the stories.
Footed puppy.
Oh yeah. Mm.
Oh, that's just a sad.
Well, the dog has
dogs. Don't get them.
I know.
Pain.
They're difficult. We used to have puppies when we were kids, and boy, I could just tell a story. I'm not going to. This is just a really bad story about a dog we used to have, but yeah, I'll just move on. Just keep it moving.
I want to hear a bad story about
dog.
No,
I don't want to tell the story because people will just call the police. Anyhow, we'll just leave it at that.
Is it like some sort of Michael Vick thing?
Oh no! It was worse. Probably worse than that.
You're fighting poodles?
No, probably worse than that.
Worse than Michael Vick?
Worse than Michael Vick. Yes.
Wow.
No, we weren't mean to the dog. By the way, we love the dog. Anyhow.
All right. Well, let's move on. This is just this won't go far, probably. I'm assuming, but I heard this was really interesting. Internet and Word, always comes up with these reasons why. Reason number 511 to hate the internet kind of thing, and it's destructive. So he's not here to add this one to his list. I would, but the title of this article is on CNN Tech. It says, "To fight revenge porn, I had to copyright my breasts." That's the title of the article. So basically, the trend is, these people film all these videos, or boyfriends or girlfriends send each other pictures of themselves in compromising situations, or allow themselves to be filmed doing things, which, as good Christians, we would say, don't do that to begin with. There's some wisdom there in the Bible to begin with.
Don't do that.
Don't do that to begin with. But when you compromise that and you have no moral standard that's setting, you just think, hey, well, maybe this is okay. I'm just going to do whatever makes me feel good. Until you realize you break up with somebody and they post that picture or they post that video online, and then you have no way to take it down. So there's no way to stop that. Mm-hmm. So, and you can't really sue people, apparently. The courts don't really have laws to protect this.
Because you sent it to them.
Yeah, there's no criminality there. Mm-hmm. Apparently. This is my very rudimentary understanding of it. So this woman had this idea, and apparently there's this trend where people are trying to copyright their body parts, so that way they can force the sites that post these videos or images to take them down, because then they're infringing on copyright laws.
Is that before the fact or after the fact?
After the fact. You're just going after the fact and copywriting it.
That doesn't work, though.
It does, actually. You can copyright, and then you can use that copyright and say there's an infringement on it. Because it does work. It works with print. I know a guy who had, a Christian guy who had published a series of Bible studies. Or not published, just used them for studies. Mm-hmm. And somebody got a hold of them, copyrighted them after the fact, and then went back to the guy who wrote it and said, you can no longer distribute these because I hold the copyrights to it. So you can do that, actually. So, yeah.
That's right? Insane.
But, yeah, that's insane. But so this woman goes into detail. She had to here's how the way you only get the copyright, though. You have to send the U.S. patent offices pictures of yourself And then they get, mostly they can be entered into the record of the patent office for people can look up and say, yep, that's the patent. And
That's stupid.
I'm serious. This is the crazy world we live in.
I could see the thinking behind it, but goodness gracious, isn't that like 10 times worse? So all of your body parts now, what you don't want to be in public knowledge, now becomes a matter
the
of
irony
the public
of it all.
record. Well, that's just insane.
To send like hundreds of pictures to validate this is me. It's
So then people have to look at those pictures and then they have to look at you and say,
somebody's going, yep, that was
yeah,
it.
that's one's it. Oh my gosh, it's just dumb.
But the tangled web we weave.
Oh my gosh.
But
hey, Michael.
here's the thing. So the larger issue, I think, though, in copywriting your body parts so that no one can post revenge porn on you, is that it's the only way to protect it is to copyright it. It tells me that there's a commodification of our bodies. We make our bodies are only as valuable as the copyrights we can put on them. There's no moral standard that makes it wrong. There's no criminal standard for people to do that. So the only recourse people have is to turn their body into a commodity. And once they turn their body into some sort of monetary value, then the courts will protect it because it's perceived damages to a monetary value. And that's the cultural shift that I'm seeing here, is that we're just turning. There's no value inherently to who you are and your body or your guy, whatever it is. But what value can I ascribe to it monetarily? Therefore, I can protect the monetary value of that. And it's the general trend of the culture.
I was watching an interview yesterday of the world's best football team, the Philadelphia Eagles. The world's best football team.
At least this year.
Doesn't matter whether it's this year or last year. It's the world's best football team right now. And the interview was by one of the players, and he makes this very interesting statement. And it's just, I'm sure it seemed innocuous. And his statement was, "Well, I'm sure the coaches will take care of our bodies." And it just kind of struck my ears as odd, because why would the coaches take care of your bodies? Why wouldn't you take care of your body? Why wouldn't you be responsible for your body? Why? And I understand. People are going to think, okay, as an athlete, you're selling yourself and selling parts of your body, but that's really, evidence of what you just said was the commodification, or was that what you call it, of our bodies? I mean, that we would sell them to the highest bidder.
Yeah,
it appears.
Yeah,
It's so sad. And it is. And we never really think of the implications. Yeah. The implications are not readily apparent. It's the long-term effects when you get CTE and you're thinking about suing the league because the league should have taken care of your body instead of you.
Well, it's the same thing. We ascribe a value to it. So, if you look at the arguments for living wages, and people will argue, well, I'm worth more than this. I'm worth more than $10 an hour, $12 an hour. Well, you're worth infinitely more than whatever the wage is.
That's exactly right.
But again, that's how people are making the argument for they're ascribing personal worth, the value of who they are, to the paycheck they received, and that's just the general trend of the culture, because we've eliminated the value inherent sense of human dignity, sacredness of human nature, so that doesn't exist. So we're relying on the economic systems of the government to give us value,
and they can only give us so much value, and they can only ascribe ourselves so much worth, and that's how much you deserve, how much you can get paid for what you can do, and it is an ultimate degradation of who you are, and seeing yourself as worth what you can get paid, rather than. Yeah. And it's so funny. I was driving up here today, and I was thinking of how this idea of being made in the image of God stretches into so many areas. So many areas. It stretches into areas for what we do, for a living. If our value is solely based on what we do for a living, then how much are you really worth? I mean,
apparently not much.
Apparently not much. $7.95 an hour. You can lose life and limb for $7.95 an hour. And it's just a total undervaluing of who you are. And
Again, just saying hi to people as they pop
oh
up.
yeah, what's up? What's happening? And it's really interesting. It really is interesting because you are more valuable than the job that you do.
Yeah, well, it's the piece that pulls some of these divergent cultural trends together. If you look at, well, if our body's only worth what we can copyright to protect it for, for years, actors and actresses, they'll insure body parts.
Even today still?
They'll do that because if they get injured, their body parts or their business or their money,
face.
their models or their faces or their hand model.
My face is worth a lot of money, by the way,
Yeah.
but go ahead.
And true, that's why we insure it around here.
That's right.
Yeah. It's a moneymaker.
That's right.
That's why we have you in admissions.
Admissions.
So you go out and you're the face.
Smile. I'm the face
of SES.
Of SES.
That's right. But so if what your earnings potential determines your value. When you cost society, it becomes a cost benefit ratio. So
sure.
You're old and you're costing us money, and you're going to the hospital and you're costing X amount, and you'll never earn that much.
And people are sitting in a room and saying, "Well, they don't have that much time to live anyway. Why should we do the surgery for them?"
Yeah.
Or they've lived
exactly
a long. They're 39. They've lived long enough.
Yeah.
They lived long enough. Now, why do we need to do this surgery on them? They can't. Their earning power is XYZ.
Yeah.
And that means that if someone who is 90 years old but they have $1 billion in the bank, they have the money. They can get whatever surgery they need, or whatever treatment they need, or whatever body part they need from somebody else.
Yeah.
So
that's what happens when we move the culture away from. That's why looking at that. What the scripture teaches about our value and our inherent worth it connects to all these issues. It's a sinew that pulls together all these divergent cultural trends that are really reflecting a destructive quality.
This is such a good segue into probably one of the topics I wanted to talk about, which was the Starbucks issue.
Oh, okay.
The Starbucks issue.
The Starbucks issue.
Now, there are a lot of people.
Well, set the phrase because maybe people don't know what's going on.
Okay, let me tell you. Well, I'm sure everybody knows that two black guys went into Starbucks and down in Philadelphia, and they were at Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia. That's a key part of the story. That if you don't live in Philadelphia or you've never lived in Philadelphia,
I wondered about that very
if you don't know why they told you where it was.
Yeah, I'm thinking, okay,
they told you where it was at Rittenhouse Square, and if you don't know what goes on around Rittenhouse Square, then the whole point is lost on you. So these guys went into the Starbucks. And Starbucks has a policy. We have the policy out here in California that all their doors now have a code to get into the bathrooms. So unless you buy something, you can't use the bathrooms. And these Starbucks have this policies for one reason only. That is to prevent vagrants and homeless people from sitting in the store all day, going into the bathroom and using it, even washing themselves up in the bathrooms. That is the number one policy, or number one reason why they have that policy at the stores. And everybody knows it. And if you've sat in a Starbucks where there's a lot of homeless people around, I'm just looking at it from Starbucks' standpoint. They don't want that in their stores. They don't want people hanging around their stores that are not buying things. I mean, I'm just trying to look at it objectively, and I think that's what the motive is behind the policy. Now, I've actually printed out, because they've actually interviewed the store manager from that store, and you can actually see her interview, or at least parts of her interview.
But that's what happened. So two guys came in.
They
said they were waiting for somebody else. Right. They're just sitting and chilling. And by the way, I've gone into Starbucks many times
and nobody's ever said a thing to me.
Coffee, whatever.
But now this new policy comes in, and if you want to use the bathroom with this new policy in effect, and you haven't bought anything, then they say
we won't give you the code.
We're not going to give you the code. So those guys sat down, they didn't buy anything, and the girl evidently came in later, and I think she says, if you guys aren't buying anything, you should probably leave the store. Now, that only smacks of racism. First of all, looking at the film, if you just look at the film itself, the only way that you see racism in the film is if you listen to...
Is it about the store video?
The store video.
Oh, I didn't know that was
There's two or three store videos. There's a 9-minute lengthy store video, in which if you watch the 9-minute lengthy store video...
You watched it, didn't you?
I did watch it. And there's a black... They're arresting these two black guys, and there's a black guy that walks right across the screen that goes to the restroom or goes wherever in the store, and they don't say anything to that person in the longer video. But these two guys, she'd asked them to leave because they have a homeless problem in Rittenhouse Square. They have a vagrant problem in Rittenhouse Square.
So tell me the demographics of this area.
It's Philadelphia.
Philly. I mean,
it's Philly.
I can't imagine those are the only two.
They're not the only two black people
that ever walked
Yes,
into that
absolutely.
store.
What I think as I watch the story is people are supplying. First of all, let me tell you a few things about video. Video can never tell you what the motive is of the participants within the video. Video that you watch can never tell you what happened prior to the video.
Well, the owner of Starbucks told us what it is.
Oh, well,
all of their store managers are racist.
Yes, and all of their employees are racist.
All their employees and store managers.
So they need to have unconscious bias.
So
if you've got unconscious
they're going
bias,
to shut down every single one of all 8,000 of them across the country to have training because they have a race problem at Starbucks.
They do. Starbucks is all racist. It's insanity. So let me set this up too because this is so important.
Go ahead.
Because we can analyze that store manager, and I've actually looked at his message. So anyway, the store manager asked these guys to leave, and as I'm saying, all the white people in the video said that it's racist, that she's asking these two black guys to leave. All the white people said that it was racist.
Yeah.
They're supplying the racism to the store. So everybody that watches the video, it's got to be racist. The white people in the video said it was racist, and there's two black guys being arrested. Now, here's what I'll say. When the police showed up on the scene, they asked the guys to leave 3 times. The store manager asked them to leave. When a store manager calls police and they've asked you to leave and you refuse to leave, then you're trespassing. Now, you might say that the impetus or the thing that drove the incident was racism. But I'm telling you, if you read what this manager said, it's the store policy. Now, you might say that the store policy is racist. But if that store policy is everywhere and it doesn't affect, just black people only, it affects everybody everywhere. You can go into Starbucks here in Oceanside, where I live in Oceanside, and you can't use the restroom without a key code, without buying something. I don't think it's a racist policy. I think people are supplying race to the issue because it's two black guys who were sitting in there, and it's always got to be about race. It has to be about race. It can't be about store policy. It can't be about failing to obey the law. It's got to be these two guys are being picked on because they're black.
Well, that's the challenge is that's what we've come to as a culture is the policies themselves are always suspect, even if they cover everybody, because they're just always assumed to be a corrupt moral foundation. Western civilization has a corrupt moral foundation. The entire culture is corrupt. Therefore, it all is racism, whether you acknowledge it or not.
Well, I think
you don't see it, Leroy.
I know I don't see it.
You don't see it.
The thing that bothers me is that, as I've said, these guys, and I'm telling you, in the 1960s, the civil rights workers in the 1960s used to get together and they would talk about what stores they would go to and how they would stage sit-ins at those particular stores. They did that. They wanted the right people to go in those stores and sit into those stores, people who would not mind being beaten up and abused by those racist workers in those stores, and who would rightly go and sit in those stores. And what would happen is they would get arrested and they would be beaten, and then they would boycott those people. They certainly would. It was a great way to break racism in the South in the 60s. Yeah. I'm telling you today, activists today who don't like anti-homeless and vagrant policies will use the same tactics to break up store policies. If you don't like Starbucks policies, which is fairly new, about vagrancy or whatever, then what do? You go sit in there and you become a vagrant, and then you raise a problem. Because here's what happens: the moment that you drop race into the question, people stop thinking.
People get scared these days.
They don't ask questions. For example. Ward Crocker's always.
He's watching.
That
was awkward. Ooh-wee. That was awkward to bring him into that, and he's watching. Sure, I don't have time to come and do it with you guys today, but I have time to watch.
I know he was scared of this topic, is what it was. But what happened is, as soon as you interject race into the question, people stop thinking. They stop asking questions. They only feel. And that's what I think is going on here. If you listen to the Starbucks CEO's statement, his statement is an example. It's an exquisite example in how you get ahead of controversy.
Yeah,
I summarized it. He spoke to 3 audiences. His 3 audiences was He said to the social justice warriors, he says, "We apologize. We recognize how our policies have been perceived, and we will work to change them." To the men he offended, he said, "We apologize for what happened to you. The blame and fault is all ours." Even though you refused to leave when they asked you to leave, this was an invitation to settle out of court as quickly as possible to make this all go away. And then here's the third audience. The third audience, he says, "Our policies are implemented differently in local areas." Listen to what he said. Here he meant, as I have said, they have a vagrancy and homeless problem at the store. We want to keep the environment clean for our paying customers. And being a reasonable person as you are, you understand that, don't you? The store manager was carrying out our plan to keep our stores clean, safe for our families.
Did he just call Butler dirty?
Well,
that's what it sounds like.
That's what it sounds like.
That's what it sounds like.
And our customers and free from those smelly, annoying people.
Oh my goodness, that sounds like he's a racist.
Who we all agree are less than desirable. He said
they're less than desirable.
He didn't say that.
Oh,
when he said that each store has a local policy. In other words, the store's policies reflect whatever's going on in the community. So if you're in a community where there's a lot of vagrants, the store managers design their policy or protocols are designed to keep you moving right out the store. I mean, let me prove that to you. Here's the gal who was the store manager, and here's an interview that she gave to Apple News. Actually, I don't know if I have it all here. But she said in the store that she's asked people to leave the store a number of times and have even been chased around the store. She's been chased around the store by people she asked to leave. She said, quite frankly, that she was following protocol. And I'm going to tell you, Starbucks didn't fire her. They simply moved her from that store to another store. They did not follow her. She said she was following a corporate policy germane exclusively to Center City, Philadelphia location and prohibits excessive loitering. And if that policy is violated, then the management has the discretion to ensure it is enforced, even if it means calling
excessive
police.
Loitering?
Loitering.
Oh, loitering.
Oh, no, excessive loitering only comes after the fact.
That's excessive loitering
I'm
comes
just saying, we're so quick to label this a racist situation because the people in the video did, and we just stopped being critical. And I'm not saying that those men, even homeless people, they need to be treated with dignity. Yeah. They have value and they have worth. But in this situation, what you're trying to do is you're trying to balance the worth and value, if you can, of homeless people who need a place to sit down, out of the sun, out of the rain, to have a cup of coffee, with the store who says we want to clean for our paying customers. I mean, it's not as easy as people wanted to make it.
Did you see the guy who's a comedian? I can't think of his name. I heard about this coming in. He's a black guy, and I don't know where he's from, but he's a comedian. He went into one of the Starbucks and he videoed himself. He's like, "I heard you all are racist," and he started. "So I want my coffee for reparations for your racism." And I just heard the audio, but apparently it was on. And this white gal behind the counter, she's like, oh no, we're not, oh sure, here's your cup of coffee. What do you want? Do you want some flavors in that? And she's just like laughing and just an awkward sort of, we love.
The laugh was, how can I give you what you want and get you out of my store as fast as I can without having any trouble?
This bending over backwards trying to appease this guy, and she's like, "Oh yeah, we're doing that now. Oh sure, here's your free coffee." But this guy made this video. He's totally laughing.
It's insane. And the thing is,
you should try that today.
I should
go into Starbucks.
No, on the way home, me and Margie will do it. I'll have Margie stand in the back so they don't know we're together.
Yeah.
Right. So then
have her video.
Have her video. Yeah. And then I could just play the angry black man.
Yeah, and then we'll put it on Off the Cuff next week. We'll bring in that video to the show.
That'll be absolutely funny. I mean, but the part that really bothers me out of the whole story
so great.
Is it isn't how we grew up. It isn't how I grew up in America. It just isn't how I grew up. It isn't how I've always envisioned we would be, 30 or 40 years into the future from when I was a kid. And it just seems to me that it's sliding backwards. It's sliding backwards so fast. and that people are not really thinking of the long-term aspects where you handicap or handcuff one half of the citizenry into thinking that anytime they have a decent conversation with you, they have to be afraid to talk to you.
Do you remember last year Starbucks had that coffee cup, ask our barista about race and racism or something like, because they were going to be the moral arbiters of helping society deal with racism,
and now
which clearly we know is false because they're all racist because they have to shut down. But that's one of the things that's lost in all this is our ability to have conversations about this stuff. It's one of the things I appreciate here about SoCal Sem teaching here and being here. We have an extremely diverse,
one of the most diverse schools in the world.
Yeah,
if diversity does anything.
Yeah, we used to get ranked on the top of these things. We were actually, in terms of racially diverse, we were ahead of like some of the California, UC California systems, schools, and we don't get ranked anymore because now they found a way to exclude us from that for certain reasons, based on because they now include other factors that are more important.
That are more important, right? And we certainly wouldn't get ranked high.
Yeah, we're not getting ranked high on those. So, but we still do have these, and it's great because not only racially, but also people from different backgrounds. We've got professionals, people that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and people in their 20s. We've got people that are in ministry and church-based ministry. We've got people that are business people that just want to learn more about
We even
God.
have people that are from Washington State.
We have people from Washington State, like for 13 years from Washington State.
You were in Washington State?
For 13 years.
That explains why you and Ward are so weird.
Yeah, that's why I explains why I like coffee. I never drank coffee until I went there. But, we'll sit in classrooms, and I love, especially in my ethics class, and you were in that class, we have these open, honest discussions about race and racism and what it looks like and how do we live that out. And it's great within the context of a collection of students that come and, that are military, non-military. Some are in the fields of behavioral sciences because we have degrees for that. And then there's some that are Bible theology. And they just bring all this rich background that's very different for that discussion. And we can have legit conversations about that. And that's just a great thing. But unfortunately, there's so few places, even in seminaries, even in colleges and especially colleges and universities, but even in seminaries, where you can't have honest discussions about these things and allow people to say maybe bad things
off the cuff
and just have things. Hey, well, what is the response, and just work through those.
That
things.
is so funny. I mean, when in the Marine Corps, because that is one of the best organizations on the planet, by the way, the best military fighting force of all time.
Leroy was in the Marine Corps.
I was in the Marine Corps, and I should know. And I can remember a couple guys, and I just got in contact with a guy I hadn't talked to in over 20 some odd years, and this guy's name was Daniel Jonas, and I wanted to fight Daniel Jonas every day of my life. We were together, I think, for 4 years, and I wanted to fight him every day, and Daniel Jonas would never fight me, and we would just be mad and angry with each other, and one day we got separated. He went somewhere for about 6 months, and I went someplace for about 6 months, and then we came back to the unit after having been gone to temporary duty for about 6 months separately, and he and I were the only two guys back at the barracks. And we really realized that we actually had a lot in common, and we actually liked each other. I mean,
imagine that.
Imagine. But for years, we didn't. And then after we kind of separated a little bit, we realized that we weren't really all that different. And I, I can't say that I learned to love the guy, but I liked the guy so much so that, a couple weeks ago I was wondering, man, whatever happened to Daniel? And I found the guy on Facebook because Facebook is like the place you find everybody. And lo and behold, we're back, we're chatting.
Just us, the politicians.
Yeah, I know. Back chatting, having a good conversations, kind of laughing about what happened. When we were dumb kids, and I would, and I even think back now and ask, why did I not like him? I mean, why didn't I? It wasn't because he was white, because I wasn't a racist, but I just didn't like him. But he was white, and he didn't like me. But I don't think it was because I was black either, because I don't think that ever came up.
Different,
which is
and
different.
That's the thing is, and you look at that, the gravitation we have. Look at studies that say people, their best friends or their closest friends, tend to be people who are the same, usually the same race, usually the same socioeconomic status, different, similar likes, all educational. They tend to have all those commonalities for their close circle of friends. But that in and of itself is being defined as racism. And therein lies the problem: is that human nature, in that sense. I mean, we as Christians, of course, acknowledge there's sin. We have a sin nature. We're corrupt. We're fallen. So there can be things that come naturally to us that are bad. We would acknowledge that. But I don't think it makes somebody racist just because they gravitate towards other people. I mean, it depends on whether they're cruel to those who are different or not. Right. But just because you gravitate towards certain people.
Let me ask you this question, because in my adult life, I've learned that the definition of racism has changed. It used to be that if you dislike someone on the basis of their skin color, you were a racist.
Yeah.
Right?
That's not the definition anymore.
But they've shifted the definition, and I don't think that people have paid attention in the shift. The definition now is that if you have to be in a position of power to be racist. And that is a critical shift, because ultimately what that does is, if you live in a nation where 262 million people are of a particular skin color and 36 million people are of another skin color, and the 36 million people who are of the other skin color don't occupy space of power, that means that really, if you take that definition to its logical conclusion, the only people who can really be racist according to that definition are the 262 million people in the positions of power.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's
the
majority.
majority.
That's what it turns out to. Yeah. Right. Anybody in the majority, by definition, is racist because they're in the majority. Therefore, they have power over others. Mm-hmm. Whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you feel any way about it or not, it doesn't matter, because you have privileges, white privilege, all those other things. Those all come to you because of you are in the majority, and the only way to counter that is to take you out of the majority, and those are the answers, and it stems from, of course, Marxist, socialist worldview that has been really come into play and dominated the culture, especially since God's been taken out of it.
But there's one aspect of all of this that is just totally missed. That racism isn't merely thinking yourself superior to other people. Racism is also thinking yourself inferior to other people. So not merely just superior, because people who are superior are segregating against you or saying that there's something lesser about you because of your race. But if you're in a minority position and you think that you're inferior to those other people, that is racism too. Yeah. So racism can go from the superior standpoint and the inferior standpoint. Because both of them are saying on the basis of race, there's something either greater about you or lesser about you. If you're saying that it's greater about you, then you're saying that the other people are lesser. And if you're saying that the other people are greater, you're assuming the fact that you are lesser.
Yeah.
So racism goes both ways. You can't escape it. It's inescapable.
Yeah, and sadly, it really does come down to not a matter of hatred or bigotry or actual practical discrimination. It's just about what class of people you are. If you're in a certain class, you are by definition a racist. If you're in another class, you're by definition not. And
I think Martin Luther King would have. I think Martin Luther King would absolutely hate that definition. I think he would absolutely hate it. His dream was that little black boys and little white girls and little white boys and little black girls would all be able to play together and be together. His vision is totally one where we are one people and we see each other as one people.
So Katie, by the way, says you hit the nail on the head, which is good.
That's really good.
The first time ever that you've hit the nail on the head. So I'm glad Katie was watching.
Oh, what's up, Katie?
Yeah. And Doug had a question for us to talk about the difference between prejudice and racism. He says seems like everything's labeled as racism these days, and that other word prejudice has gone out. I used to make more of a distinction between those. I mean, I remember this going back, 20 some, not quite 30 years ago yet, but talking about the difference. And I'd ask people, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, why do you mean prejudice or racism? And even that long ago, it's from secular educational institutions, that distinction has gone away. So what do you see as those differences?
It's very interesting. And I was reading, because, I get into this conversation with a lot of my friends, And I had to look up what the difference was between prejudice and racism. Prejudice is the large category that racism fits under. It's a large category of...
So you see prejudice as a larger category.
Prejudice is the larger category, and racism is that very narrow sliver that actually... Because, I mean, we're prejudiced about a lot of things, right? I mean, think about it. There's a benign use of the term prejudice.
Or discrimination, if you use them synonymously.
Right. But there's a benign use, and when we're going to use the term prejudice to mean that we have a predisposition to not like something, right? That's what I mean. I have a predisposition when I was a kid to not like broccoli or lima beans. You know what I mean? When my mother put them on our plate, and I know she was cooking them, I always wore a shirt with a pocket to the table because I did not like them. In that sense, I'm saying it's a benign use. You can't have anything against.
So you're prejudiced against shirts with pockets.
Well, I had the pockets with the shirt on so that I could sit lower at the table and scoop them into the pocket and then ask to go to the restroom and discard them. You see,
you couldn't have gotten away with that.
I put a napkin in that bad bear.
Did you actually get away with it though?
On numerous occasions. I had it. It was a skill. So what I'm saying is prejudice. It was a skill.
Wow, that's impressive.
Man. Those lima beans were horrible. They were horrible. So I look at prejudice in the large category. There's a large category of like and dislike. But then when you talk about prejudice and racism, now what do we mean when we say prejudice? Do we mean racism when we say prejudice? We can't mean the same thing, can we? We can mean something similar. We can't mean the same thing because if they're the same, then there's no difference between the two.
Now, one of the things that I looked at as a distinction, and this isn't maybe the full way of looking at it, but I always thought, the difference in my mind between prejudice and racism is that prejudice, if I break it down, is prejudgment. You're judging without knowing information.
Sure.
So prejudice is based on ignorance. Mm-hmm. I think prejudice by nature, at least we talk about, let's look at the negative.
The negative, not the benign.
Potentially benign way.
Right.
But let's look at the negative way. It's based on ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
I've never, to the summit, like I had family members, and I won't throw any names out, like when I was younger, that I remember talked about, like, they lost their jobs or they had anger towards like black guys because they had taken this job or that job, and they said they were lazy or uneducated, I had these views. And I think some of that was they had met one or two people and they made that conclusion,
mm-hmm. and they tried to put that to the whole category.
And there was a prejudice on that they applied to the whole category of all blacks were like that because they had met a couple people. I still think to some degree that's a prejudice. I think when it becomes racism is when you know better. So in other words, now I've met people that don't fit my category, but I still choose to maintain my attitude towards all people in that category, then it transcends to me like into racism degree. What do you think about that as an idea?
I could see where it had some appeal, but I would find it hard to escape the term for that person to be racism because it's embedded within the whole idea because you're using race as the key discriminator. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, and I think maybe there has to be some sort of racism too, where there has to be some animus associated. Where you can have people that have prejudices that don't necessarily have animus. Mm-hmm. I think. I don't know. I just think that there's got to, in practical terms, there's a distinction where. There's a lot of us that have. Now they want to say everybody's racist.
Right,
well, I don't think that's true. I think we all might have prejudices that we're unaware of, but I think most people, especially as believers, we have to say, look, if I become aware that my ignorance has made me think this way or act this way, then I will change that based on, now I have the right information in my life and I'm going to change that.
Would you say then that prejudice may be our predisposition toward something, right, or toward another, which we are willing to leave or lose once disconfirming evidence comes, whereas racism,
I think so.
Whereas racism might be not merely a predisposition, but a definite, or you would call it a knowledge-based, this is the way things are with these people. Would you say that? Were we getting closer?
I think it's fair because, when I first started, I was in seminary. I started waiting tables to pay the bills,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I go and I get this job, and I'm in the South, Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and so I start waiting tables, and one of the servers there is this black guy who's a gay guy,
Mm-hmm.
and he wasn't shy about being gay, so I knew he was gay, and he wasn't. Obviously, he was black because he had skin color. So
Really?
But yeah, he's like, one of the first things he says, I'm there like a couple days, and he's like, oh, I hate waiting on black people. They're so terrible. They don't, like saying all these terrible things about black customers. And I'm thinking, this guy's a racist. I'm not, this is weird. What is wrong with this guy? And so, but then really, over time realized that in this particular area, the black customers who came in never tipped.
Mm-hmm. So he was really mad that he wasn't getting a tip.
But also, I came to, as a Christian, I came to say, I hate waiting on Christians. Sunday was the worst day. Because they leave you a tracts, 4 laws, no, come to know Jesus as the tip and not give you any money.
Or the fake looking money.
Yeah,
which
fake,
got
with the Jesus gospel.
Jesus gospel on the other side. That's terrible.
Oh, man, I hated that.
Yeah.
So to my Christian friends, I would be like, dude, I hate waiting on Christians. I prefer to wait on some unsaved, drinking people, and they're a lot more fun, and they'll give you a lot more money. So is that prejudice, or if I say not racism. If I say I don't want to wait on black people,
so maybe
like this guy
maybe prejudice is aimed at an idea rather than.
But even this guy was a black guy, and that's not a prejudice because it was based on experience,
right? But
he didn't want to wait on black people.
Yeah, I just think of guys that I knew when I was in the Marine Corps, and I think I've always had high EQ, high in emotional understanding of people, and I'd have these guys. I went to sniper school in 1989, and I didn't leave my unit with a partner, so I picked up a partner at the school. And I was a corporal at the time, and my partner was a lance corporal. So immediately they put us together as a team, and I was in charge because I'm the corporal. I'm, senior man.
You're the man.
Well, as we're making our way through school, there's a difference of opinion that forms, and because everybody's there competing, not with another guy, you're competing with yourself to get. To make the grades and to pass all the different iterations, friction arises and you don't trust your partner because you just don't have any experience. Well, as we were at the rifle range one day and me and my partner are not really getting along, he dropped an N-bomb on me. Now, I'm a corporal and he's a lance corporal. You know that I can just get him busted. And I went to one of the instructors, and his name was Sergeant Smith, who was one of the coolest guys. So that dude was so cool, he had a wind chill factor. And I said, think about that.
Oh, you're slick.
I said to him, hey, this happened. And, what should I do about it? And I was like, I was thinking I should charge sheet him, get him non-judicial punishment, which is a big thing. And as I talked with Sergeant Smith, and we kind of worked through that, he understood where he was coming from. He understood where I was coming from. And what I decided to do was just to say, hey, me and this kid are going to talk. And, we're either going to do some what we call wall-to-wall justice, wall-to-wall counseling. We do that in the Marine Corps.
Like you talking about beating somebody?
We mean kicking his behind. Oh. That's exactly right. And I would have I'd hit that guy with so many rights he'd have been begging for a left. That's old school Leroy. So anyway, me and this guy had a conversation, and after that incident, we became good friends because I think he knew I had him over a barrel, and I think he knew that. But if I would have gone further with it, it would have ended his career. And I just have never been one of those people who would want to punish someone for a dumb thing that they did, if there was some redeemable quality.
Isn't that interesting, though? I mean, think about it. And the question came up, how much is cultural versus, isn't there some of this culture? And a lot of it is cultural, because race is a social construct. Race is an invented cultural category. And so, of course, a lot of racism then becomes cultural bias. And the only way to solve that is to have a proper worldview. And I actually just talked about this with my students last week in one of my classes. But it's interesting, though, on that side of it, how you came across a situation and there's a guy that said something that was okay, that could be classified as racist.
It's not classified.
I mean,
but
I mean, anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
broadly, you could talk to
Sure.
a lot of people. They'd say, yes, that is.
Yeah.
You know, or even just saying it, whether he was or not.
whether he
just
wasn't,
the
I
use
don't,
of the
he
word.
wasn't one. He was just dumb.
Yeah. But through relational control, through social controls that dealt with one-on-one relationship, you know, which is the essence of a dignity culture, is the way to solve those things is usually the social control mechanism. The way that society resolves the conflict is usually interaction between the individuals, the aggrieved parties, or groups that represent different parties, and they
Sure.
work it through. But because we're a victim culture now, we use social control as solved through a third-party grievance through the government.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the only way to resolve that is somebody says something, and the only way is now the government has to intervene.
Some third party has to
because
come
we have
in
no
and-
capacity
Right. That's right.
for relationship. We have no capacity to work things through. We don't even allow that to happen. It's not even an option. Like, those guys couldn't be upset, you know, kicked out by the cops and come back later and say, hey, we're going to talk to the manager above you. And then they sit down with those two guys in the Philly Starbucks, and they come back and with the manager of the manager, whoever's in charge.
Whoever's
of
in
that
charge.
person. They come in on some Saturday and they say, look, well, this is what this scout did to us. He kicked us out. And, hey, let's work this out. Let's figure it out. That's not even perceived as an option anymore for anybody to solve that. Because it has to be through the government, and it has to be through punishment, and it has to be through, you know, financial.
Which tells
Again,
you that the
commodification
goal,
of life.
The goal is not reconciliation. The goal is vengeance. The goal is totally vengeance.
Well, the goal is social justice,
Right, well,
which is a word that I hate, and that's
'cause it's not justice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But it's the only way just is to harm the person who did something, so that they know the suffering. Supposedly, is like justice is bringing harm to the other.
Right.
That's what it is.
That's one aspect of it.
There's, you look at the issues that we've discussed before, where, you know, gals were talking about men having oppressed women, or they kept them out of the workforce, and some people saying, well, because of this certain guy, this policy or that policy, men might, guys who might be hurt in that process. And one of the feminist gals said, well, if innocent men are harmed in this, so be it.
So be it.
So be it, because that's the only way to justice is to
harm someone.
To harm
Oh,
somebody.
you mean
else.
from the social justice point?
Yeah, from the social justice,
okay.
yeah. From her
perspective, it was just to destroy somebody else.
And that's okay, because it's balanced out by the wrong that was done to this. The wrong that was done to us in the past is only balanced by allowing wrong to happen to this other group who did the wrong.
Sure.
By group, not by individual.
Not by individual.
So it doesn't matter if, me, Joe Miller, I haven't done anything to harm you, Leroy Hill, but whites as a group might have harmed blacks as a group. Therefore, the only way for justice to be done is allow for me to be harmed in some way to elevate you. And that's this sort of victim culture.
And let me
mentality.
say, that is so counter to Scripture. God says in Ezekiel 18,
Yeah.
I am not going to harm the son for what the father did. I mean, think about that. I'm not going to harm the son for what the father did. I'm going to hold the father accountable for his own sins, and I'm going to hold the son accountable for their sins. And if the righteous man turns wicked, then I'm going to punish him. And if the wicked walks away from his wicked ways, then he's not going to be punished.
Yeah.
But these social justice people, they want it's because the people who committed the crimes are dead. They're long gone.
Yeah.
So they're not really interested in justice per se, because you can't get justice with those people anymore. They're gone.
Yeah.
They want vengeance against the children of those people.
It's vengeance and power. And,
Right.
like Katie asked, and then what happened to two wrongs don't make a right. And the reality is that idea of a wrong was done here, you can't make it right by doing wrong somewhere else, is gone, because the argument now is, yes, you can. Because it's about power, not about individual value. So it's not about that. Okay, so say you were discriminated against. It's not that your sacredness of your life was, you as a human being are sacred in God's eyes. It's not that injustice was done to the sacred nature of Leroy Hill. It's that power abused somebody who's not in power. Because you don't really have any value as an inherent individual. It's only by groups.
Right.
So the only way to bring justice is to elevate give you more power,
based on
and
my victimhood,
take power
away from
somebody else.
Right.
And so you do it by groups, not individuals. So the individual loses a sense of identity, a sense of meaning, because value has already been destroyed.
And his suffering is not really his personal suffering or something that's been done to him. It's been done to all of us.
Yeah, and it doesn't even matter if you're benefited. So that's the other sad part about all this, is that if you were kept out of a job, and because you were a black man, and you were sent to jail, or some terrible thing happened to you, it wouldn't even necessarily, in the eyes of many social justice warrior type people,
matter.
It doesn't even matter if I get correction for you.
It's the whole,
because you don't actually really matter. You only matter in that you're a part of a class of victim people, and so it becomes one victim group compared to another victim group. You see the conflict on college campuses now, where you have these white professors who are advancing these things, and now all of a sudden another group comes in and says, well, you don't have a right to say this, and these people have been the most liberal, most vocal about advancing these things, and then they have a conflict. There was that case we brought up at one of our other shows where the gal had written a play to help the poor and the migrant or the immigrant, and she was just, this is terrible injustice being done to illegal immigrants. And the students got up in arms because, well, she's a white woman telling the story that belongs to this class of victim minorities, so you're stealing our story. So this woman who was in
cultural appropriation.
It was the cultural appropriation.
Right.
So she's harming that. Therefore, you don't have a right to speak to it.
It is
and so
it is
again, it's about classism.
It is insane. It is. Listen, hate has always been hate. Yeah. Humans have experienced hate.
From a Christian perspective, that's true.
I mean, I'm
just classifying. Right. You're saying that from a Christian perspective.
Even from a non-Christian perspective, they understand the concept
at one point
of hate.
Yeah, the culture shared in that Judeo-Christian.
What I'm saying is, I'm not talking about the distinction, the Judeo-Christian distinction. I'm talking about the whole concept of hate as an idea. Everybody knows what hate is. In the same way that everybody knows what love is. They may have different. I think they may have different definitions of what that means, but they know what the concept of love is.
They know what the word means, but I don't think there's any agreed upon definition.
Right. Well, I would agree with that. I would totally agree with that. But what I'm saying is, the concept, the ideas of hate and love and joy and peace and happiness are all within the range of human ability or human experience. All humans understand what those things mean. They understand. Even if they have a different definition of it than another person, they understand in their own context what the idea of hate, love, justice, peace, and all those other things mean. Even if they're redefining it differently, they have an idea of what it means.
But see, that's the problem is you can even define it like similarly. Hate is an emotion, whatever it is. But we've looked at Niebuhr before and the arguments within the Black Lives Matter movement where violence is justified if it accomplishes the goal. So we acknowledge violence can be bad, but it's not inherently.
It's not inherently bad. I understand that.
So to do violence to somebody else,
so ultimately,
to throw a brick at somebody's head is okay
as long as it's forwarding.
As long as it advances the agenda
right.
of taking power from those in power and giving power to those who are not. And that's the problem. Is there isn't that.
Even those people that are defining that, they love the pursuit of power for themselves. So they understand what love is, right? I'm not saying that they're...
Well, they use the word, but I don't think they even understand what love is, because that's not what love is. Love is not the pursuit of power.
Not the pursuit of power. I understand that. But what I'm saying, in their context, they would say that they understand what it was.
Yeah, they'd redefine it.
I would
say they'd redefine it. But
So only point I'm making is that within the whole human range of emotional experiences, regardless of where those emotions are aimed at, everybody's capable of understanding love, hate, peace, and all those other things, even if they're redefining it
some capacity. That's true.
Right.
The culture certainly blinds us toward any of those.
Toward a universal definition of it.
Yeah.
Right. So I would agree with that. And the only reason I'm making this point is that if you're going to say that for some humans, these ideas of love, hate, joy, peace are not available to them, then that's something less than human. You're saying that those people are not human; they're subhuman. Right? I'm not saying you.
No,
I'm not saying you, but I'm saying you're saying that those people are subhuman.
Yeah,
right?
that's what this done to them. It's created, it's removed the sense of humanity.
And in that sense, we would say that those ideas that create subhumans out of other humans is in itself inhuman. It's inhumane.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
But because we all experience this whole range of emotions, we can relate to each other on the concepts themselves. Even if we disagree, we can at least at some points bridge, or at least possibly bridge the gap between what we mean by hate or whatever. And in that way, a white person can look at the same thing that I've seen and experience the same range of emotions that I've experienced.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
The only way, and so what we're talking about is what this comes down to, and we're going to run out of time on this, but the idea of cross-cultural communication. Because as culture has become, as we've rejected any idea of a metaphysical reality outside of us that's absolute, the idea of God, the idea of even people, even though it was a physical reality, whether it be the Constitution or the definition of laws, even though that's a cultural definition, we've rejected even those as valid things because postmodernism said words have no inherent meaning,
right.
So therefore it's only the meaning I ascribe to it. So both at a metaphysical level and a socio-political level, we've eliminated any foundation for shared meaning in life, and because of that, we have as many diverse cultures as there are people, almost, and segments of people. And here's the underlying principle is when you share a worldview that includes the sort of the metaphysical and the epistemological and the ethical, when your worldview is rooted in the same
narrative,
overriding
meta-narrative.
Meta-narrative, then diversity brings richness and beauty to that world.
Right.
Diversity brings value because you recognize those differences are only on the ethical, moral, physical level, and because there's a foundation outside of that, diversity is a good thing.
Right.
But what happens when you eliminate that truth outside of that supersedes culture? Diversity only leads to fracture and division.
The balkanization of America.
The balkanization of society.
That's right.
And that's exactly what it's leading to. And that's what we're seeing here. So because we can't define love based on anything except our individual cultural definition, because to those, postmodernists, love is the only meaning I ascribe to it, therefore I define it by my nature, who I am, and I, as an individual, give it value from what I define.
Because they're the God of their own world.
Yeah, I'm the God of my own world. And
Right.
So there's no way to communicate with anyone who is outside of that worldview. Outside of that, well, they didn't have a worldview. At that point, it's just a culture. Anyone outside that cultural perspective cannot be communicated because there's no common language.
Right.
It's the danger of where we've come, and it's why it's been so. It's why we've deteriorated so quickly. People say, "Oh, what happened to America? What's going on? Why did it happen so quickly?" It didn't happen quickly. The cultural erosion has been there because of the metaphysical erosion, that the denial of any ontological reality outside of us. And once that was gone, the culture maintained for a while. Look good. It's like a building when the foundation starts to erode and corrode. It can take decades. And all of a sudden it collapses. Oh, why did it suddenly collapse? Well, it didn't suddenly collapse. It's been collapsing for a long time.
And that explains why the social media gurus are all calling for the civil war. They're saying that there's a civil war that's been going on in America, and they're calling for the complete, separation of those on the left and those on the right.
Yeah.
Those on the left who own the tools of communication ought to push those on the right out into the sea.
Which is what they're doing.
Which is exactly what they're doing.
What
they're trying to do.
Well, that'll have to be another topic for another time.
Too bad, Ward, you missed a good conversation, Ward. Too
or,
bad.
Because he wasn't here, it was excellent.
Ooh!
Controversy. Yeah, he's actually
Why is he banging on the wall?
I heard you banging on the wall. All right, brother. Well, we did actually miss you, man.
Yeah.
We'll be glad to have you back next time. At least that's the face of the show we're putting on. So, all right, we'll be back next week.